I love Civilization 6, I love Magic the Gathering, and I love you, my dear viewers. Mix all those three things together and you end up with YouTube videos made by me, Loki the Gamer, featuring my own homemade Magic cards based off Civilization 6. Let's do the Portugal set if you don't mind today. And if you do mind, there are many other videos to watch on my channel if for some reason you hate Portugal. I don't. Why would I? I never tried them in Civ 6, but they are definitely interesting. They will have one legendary land card, one leader, 3 unique items, 3 unique builds indeed, yes, and 1 card based off of the leader's agenda. Speaking of that leader, the all too infamous J-A-O-A the Third that no one knows how to pronounce among fans of Civ 6 unless you actually are Portuguese. I did some research, apparently it's Juan, something like that. Am I close? Tell me I'm close. Anyways, we'll get to see him in a minute, soon enough. First, an overview of Portugal. There will be the mention of ships, of course, many ships in the Portuguese set. Those ships will be interpreted as vehicles in Magic, blue vehicles specifically. There will be the concept of trading with others, and that I've done a number of different ways across different card sets, but for Portugal, I turned the concept of trading with others as targeting others. So keep an eye out for that. There will be the concept of increased unit sights, so units that have extra sight in the game of Civ 6, and to me, in this case, that was kind of like spying, and as you can see from my equivalency chart, spying translates to a number of things. One of them is peeking, so looking at cards you shouldn't normally be allowed to. In this case, in the player's hand. And the Portuguese have an extra long and wide trade range across the sea, mind you. They can only trade across the sea, but when they do, they can trade super far. And I decided to translate that into something rather useful, is the ability to get past Hexproof and Shroud. So yes, because of their extra range, they can reach so far and deep, they can target things that normally wouldn't be targetable, such as things with Hexproof and Shroud. So that is pretty powerful, and I decided to chalk that up to them having an extra long trade range. There will be mention of city-states. City-states, as always, translate to legendary lands. Yes, indeed, I created a whole bunch of legendary lands in this project. None of them are city-states yet. If and when I get around to making another project, even more Civ 6 cards, then it will be because I have received a whole bunch of support from you. From viewing, liking, subscribing, even Patreon, and then I'll be able to do more cards, and I will make all the world wonders into legendary artifacts, I will make all the governors into planeswalkers, and I will make all the city-states into legendary lands. Not that I have a great skill at making legendary lands, they tend to be a little bit too powerful and game-changing, but hey, who's counting? So, there's more to say about Portugal. There will be some science boosts, which of course always translate to card draw. And finally, a little bit of production, which always mean ramping, so mana generating or discounts, the like. The color identity of Portugal, I'll give you 3 guesses. Was that blue? Oh, got it in one! Of course, it's blue and only blue, so Juan the Third is going to be a mono blue commander, and all of his cards will indeed also be mono blue. The land of Portugal will grant blue. In fact, let's move right on to the legendary land of Portugal. In Civilization 6, Portugal gets the ability Casa da India. International trade routes can only reach cities on the coast or with a harbor, but receive 50% bonus towards all yields. So indeed, as I've said, the Portuguese can only trade internationally across the sea, but they have a great incentive to do so because they have increased yields, and they also do get extra range because it says trader units have 50% bonus range over water and can embark as soon as they are unlocked. So there you go, you can trade quickly, easily, far ranging with a bonus over sea, but you can only trade over sea. let's see what I did with that ability. The land of Portugal into a legendary land of mythic rarity. Casa de India says, spells you cast can only target opponents, permanents they control, or spells they control. So there you go, you can only target others because you can only trade with others. Now I know in Civ 6 you don't have to trade with others, you can do domestic trade routes, but it is such in your best interest to trade with others. It is really a huge incentive for you as the Portuguese to trade with others that you'd be a fool to trade with yourself. So in order to reflect that obvious incentive, I made sure that the card really made it mandatory that you trade with others. Because now, with that in play, you can only ever target other players or permanents they control, or spells they control. But that's not all. In order to reflect this great range of yours, like I said, that range means you'll be able to reach things that you normally shouldn't be allowed to. And thus, if we read on, it says, spells you cast can target opponent, permanent they control, and spells they control as though they didn't have Hexproof or Shroud. So there's the anti-Hexproof, anti-Shroud. You can target things you normally shouldn't be allowed to because of your extra range. So that's how I turned this huge incentive that Portugal has to trade with others into a mandatory you must target others, but you can do so with amazing range and reach. And it taps for a blue, of course. Juan the Third now. No, seriously, do I have that right? Juan? I have a whole parody video on my channel about these Civ 6 leaders themselves struggling to pronounce that. Check it out, it's hilarious. What a great punchline. The ability of Juan, let's call him Bob. The ability of Bob the Third from Civ 6 is called Porta do Cerdo. Really? The door of the pig? Interesting. I don't speak Portuguese, but I do speak Spanish, so it seems like it translates into the door of the pig. Anyway, so Bob's door of the pigs, boy, we are really bastardizing the poor Portuguese people here, says all units receive extra sight, so there's the extra sight, and 1 trade route capacity bonus when a civilization is met. Open borders with all city-states, and there's the mention of city-states. So yes, you are very friendly with city-states, and the more you explore, the more you meet civilizations, and the more trade routes you get. So I turned that into something really interesting. And yes, it would involve peeking into players' hands, and it will involve blue vehicles, so ships, because really, how do you trade really in real life? Well, with ships. So I gave a Porta de Cerdo this awesome ability that involves trading and vehicles, and also peeking into players' hands, and also players get to trade, not really with you, but they get to trade with themselves, and you get to mess with them a little bit. So can't wait to show you this pretty neat card. For only 3 mana, 1 blue and 2 generic, you got a 4/3. Gee, good stats for only 3 mana. A 4/3 uncommon human noble advisor. And his Porta de Cerdo ability says, blue vehicles you control have tap, target opponent mills 2 cards. Now, let's pause here. Normally, milling is related to culture. It's a cultural way of attacking the opponent. Normally, all culture-based powers are translated into something pacifying, something defensive, mostly. But in this case, milling is very aggressive. That's how you deck someone, that's how you get rid of their library and you win the game. That's because in Magic, the concept of being decked, of having your library emptied, has always been associated with insanity. And the logic to associate that with culture and tourism is that the opponent is so dazzled by your culture that they have literally been driven insane by the awesomeness of your culture, and they lose the game and you win. Normally, I reserve milling for that. There is one civ in particular, Sweden, that is all about milling. I gave Sweden some really intense milling abilities, but in this case, no. Milling is not associated with culture, it's simply a means to an end. I made sure that blue vehicles could mill your opponent because the rest of the ability might actually flail and fall flat without it. So it is simply a stepping stone for the rest of the ability, which reads, then look at their hand. If you do, So they must have had a hand for you to see. If you didn't see any card, then you didn't actually see their hand. If you do, you may choose target card in that player's hand and target card in that player's graveyard. The player discards the first card and returns the second one to their hand. So you get to trade, not with them, but you get to force them to trade with themselves. You hopefully find a card that you really don't want in their hand, and you find a card in their graveyard that you don't mind giving them back, and you swap them. If you find no such advantageous trade, then you don't do it. It says you may. And at the end of the day, even if that ability might actually fumble and not find anything useful to do, you still do mill 2 cards. This ability is not meant really to be a cultural attack of milling, like I gave Sweden, but you could turn it into that. All your blue vehicles have that ability. They just need to tap, they don't even need to be crewed. So you could absolutely turn Juan Bob into a milling deck, even though that was never the intention. So it's an option. And also because he has a deal with city-states. City-states have open borders automatically. I made it so that legendary lands you control enter untapped. So you have easy access to city-states through open borders, and therefore you have easy access to all legendary lands you control. You can use them right away, even if they should normally enter tapped. So there you go, that is a minor deal. I doubt that you would load your deck with nothing but legendary tap lands. I don't think that there are enough in blue alone because he's mono blue, and even though I created obviously a whole bunch of legendary lands for this project, very few of them are actually blue and tap lands at that, so I'm not sure that you can build your deck around that. That's a little crazy, but yeah, the rest of the ability and his stats being pretty darn good for a only 3 drop make him an interesting potential commander, to say the least. And he has a special unit, which of course is a ship, so he's got his own blue vehicle to use, not to mention all of the many blue vehicles I've created in this project. His own unique unit is the something else I'm not sure how to pronounce, so is it no or now or now? I'll say no. In Civ 6, that ship is very interesting. It comes with a free promotion. Like usual, I turn a free promotion into an ETB bonus, a choice of different bonuses that you get upon ETB to reflect that your free promotion comes with a choice of something good. And also, this no ship can build another unique build. It can build the Feitoria, which we will talk plenty about. That is very unique. They did something kind of crazy with Portugal. Is it due to the fact that it is one of the last civs that they created in the game? One might say, well, they made something so unique and crazy because they were running out of ideas. No, I don't think we should look at it that way. They just decided to include the concept, the real-life concept of the Feitoria in a realistic way, and it made for something unique. So we'll talk about that in just a second, but yes, the Now ship can use up a charge to build a Feitoria, and on the card I made it so that it can sacrifice itself to go and tutor the Feitoria card. So let's look at the Now. For 4 mana, 1 blue, 2 generic, 3 generic, you've got an uncommon artifact vehicle. This vehicle enters with your choice of a vigilance, haste, or +1/+1 counter. So there's your free promotion, a choice of 3 nice things. And then, sure enough, you sacrifice this artifact and pay 2 to search your library for a card named Feitoria. Reveal it, put it in your hand or the battlefield. Then shuffle. And a crew of 2. Stats 3/3. So you'll notice that you can tutor the Feitoria, and yes, you can put it straight onto the battlefield, so why wouldn't you? Well, you might decide that it's not the right time. We'll take a look at it right about now, and you'll see that playing it at the right time is really key to turning this into a powerhouse of an artifact, because it is indeed an artifact. But let's take a look at the crazy concept of the Feitoria in Civ 6. It is an improvement that you can build with, indeed, the Now ship. You build it in the land of your opponents. So yes, indeed, you take your ship into the borders of your opponent, and then right there in the water, in the coastal land of your opponents, you build an improvement that blocks that one tile, and as far as I know, they cannot remove. Now, it's not so damaging because it's a coastal tile, so there's a limited amount of things that you can build on a coastal tile. Some of them come pretty late in the game, so you didn't really rob them of something that worthwhile, but it's still nasty to just take away the use of a tile from an opponent. And the point of it is not just to upset them, but also that from now on, international trade routes sent to that city will earn you a massive boost in gold, of course. Now, when you play Civilization 6 as the Portuguese, you might want to just build one feitoria in one city and then send all of your trade routes to that city. That is the rule of least effort. But really, if you're going for a cultural victory, then it's important to send one trade route, at least one trade route, to every civilization in the game. In case you don't know that, that is a key of the cultural victory. One of the many reasons I love cultural victories, because you need really a mastery of so many different aspects of the game. It's a machine with so many moving parts, a cultural victory. And yes, by sending at least one trade route to every civilization, you get a really massive bonus to tourism to that civ. So if you want to increase your tourism with everyone, send a trade route to everyone. You will get that tourism bonus with everyone. So yes, if you do want to achieve a cultural victory, then make sure that you do send a trade route to everyone. And if you are indeed the Portuguese and you want to do that and get your bonus, then you'll have to build a feitoria in every civilization out there. So pick one coastal city around the globe for every civ and build a feitoria, send your trade routes, you'll get your tourism bonus, and you'll of course get your massive trade bonus from the feitoria. So, it is indeed in Portugal's best interest to build more than one feitoria. All that use parentheses to say that you are incentivized to build many feitorias. So I made sure that my card, my magic card, also incentivizes you to use the ability many times. Here is the Feitoria, a rare artifact that drops for 4. Now normally land improvements I turn into land auras. This one, since I didn't have an ability to give an enchanted land, I decided that it should really just have some static abilities and it should be an artifact. So it says gift a treasure. So if you remember the gifting concept from Bloomborough, as you cast this spell, you may promise a gift to an opponent, and if you do, they create a treasure when the Feitoria enters. And of course, like all gifting cards, there is more. When this enters, if the gift was promised, put a trade counter on target land an opponent controls. So if you do allow an opponent to get a free treasure, you get to stick a trade counter on a land an opponent controls. Doesn't have to be the same opponent, could be any opponent. So you just put a trade counter on a land. That's not yours. What is the point of that? Well, let's read on. When this enters, so you got another ETB trigger. When this enters, put a trade counter on target land that opponent controls. So you may get a free one from the gift, and then you definitely get one here. If that land is an island, you may pay 1. If you do, repeat this process. So, to recap, you get 1 for sure. Then, if you picked an island, that is totally dependent on the color your opponents play, of course. They may or may not have islands, but if you did pick an island, you may pay some mana to repeat this process again and again and again, as long as you have mana and as long as your opponents still have islands. And thirdly, you get to stick an extra trade counter on a land if you agreed to the gift. 1 for sure, maybe 1 more for a gift, and potentially many more as long as your opponents have islands and you have mana. Now, of course, you could stick your trade counters on the same lands, but you'll see in a minute that it is not of any use if you put them all on the same land. You really should put them on different lands. Because the point of all of these trade counters is the last ability. Whenever you commit a crime, create a treasure token for each land on the battlefield with a trade counter. So yes, I reused the good old commit a crime concept from Thunder Junction, and as a reminder, targeting opponents, anything they control, and or cards in their graveyard is a crime. And don't you remember, there was something earlier, the land of Portugal forced you to target your opponents with all of your spells and abilities. So there you go. Not only you've got a land that forces you to target your opponents, but now you've got a major incentive to target your opponents, because every time that you commit a crime, you get your trade reward that you deserve, which comes in the form of a hoard of treasure. Just to go over how quickly these treasures can pile up, the Juan ability of tapping a ship in order to look at someone's hand and swap a card from their hand to their graveyard uses 3 targets. You target an opponent, you target a card in their hand, you target a card in their graveyard. So just using that ability once targets 3 things. So you get to commit 3 crimes and you create 3 treasures for each land with a trade counter. So it can massively do a lot of damage. That's why I made sure that this Feitoria cost 4, so it's expensive, and it's expensive to drop more trade counters. You have to pay 1 for each extra one, so it doesn't come cheap, but the upshot is amazing. Oh, hold on, I just realized I made a mistake. You don't commit 3 crimes when you use your ship swapping trading thingamajig. No, you do target an opponent, that's a crime. You target a card in their graveyard, that's a crime. But you target a card in their hand, that is not listed as being part of a crime. Targeting opponents, anything they control, and or cards in their graveyards. Yeah, so a card in their hand is not something that they control, so it doesn't count as a crime. Still, you commit 2 crimes, so you get 2 treasures for each land with a trade counter. Not to mention other things like, I don't know, Sea King's Blessing. For 1 blue, you target anything you want, and you get a ton of treasures for each land with a trade counter. So yes, just like a good old Nadu, it's pretty easy to abuse something like that, so it's pretty awesome. And don't forget that you can just draw it normally. You could just top deck that card. You could also tutor it with your Now ship. And I want to mention that this is yet another Promise a Gift card, perfect for a Wilhelmina Dutch deck. And we're not done, the Portuguese also have one more unique build, an infrastructure called the Navigation School. It is a building that replaces the university, so you can expect some science bonus. Science equals draw, as we've said. And the navigation school loves the coast. The more coastal terrain there is in that city, the more extra science you'll get. And it also gives you a production bonus towards ship. So expect some ramping for your blue vehicles. And here is the navigation school. It is a land aura, so that one indeed I made it into a traditional land aura. It must enchant an island because of its dependent on, the coast. For 3 blue, you get a common that says, when this enchantment enters, draw a card. If you control 5 or more islands, draw 3 cards instead. So, yes indeed, to represent how much it loves the coast, if you have enough islands, you'll get a whole bunch of draw. And finally, Enchanted Land has a tap, add a colorless and a blue. Use this mana only to cast blue vehicle spells. There's your ramping that you can only use for ships, blue vehicles spells. Pretty straightforward, and it is a great addition for all the civs out there who A, care about land auras. I created many cards that scale up the more land auras you have in general or on one single land, so that's yet another one for the group. And also this card is great for civs that care about ships. There are plenty of civs out there who are all about ships. The Phoenician come to mind, Norway, and civs like that would love to make use of a spell like this one to give them extra ramp towards their many ships. And now we have one last card to look at. It is the one that I customized around the agenda of Juan III. So what he likes and doesn't like when you play against him as an AI, he loves a lot of land. So he loves people that have explored a lot and penalizes those. He dislikes those who have explored very little land. So since we're talking about exploration and lots of land or very little land, obviously we'll be looking at the amount of land cards in play across different players. So I made this instant for 2 blue and 2 generic and uncommon that says compare the number of lands you control with the number of lands each opponent controls. Opponents who control fewer lands than you each return a number of creatures they control to their owner's hand equal to the difference. So it's in your best interest to have a whole lot of lands, and ideally your opponents have few. A couple of decks that could use something like that very much is not just the Portuguese, but definitely Coupe. The Maori under Coupe will have usually a whole lot of lands. You get to do Coupe's Voyage and spit out a whole lot of land, fetch some islands from your deck fiercely at the beginning of the game, as much as you can, until people decide to start attacking you, and then you need some defense. So eventually you will end up with so many islands that a spell like that will be devastating in a Maori deck. A Phoenician deck would probably not want this card at all, because the Phoenician give their lands away, if you can believe that. If you haven't seen my Phoenician video, it is very eye-opening. I went crazy with the Phoenician. I had no choice because they have a very unique and crazy power. And therefore, yeah, they rely on treasures. They generate treasures even more than the Portuguese and really any other Civ out there that I created for this project. And so they rely entirely on treasures for their mana base, and they give their lands away. So usually something like that will not be good for them. If you play that on them, rather, they would be quite cross and very hurt indeed. So yeah, this unsummoning can be pretty massive. And why specifically unsummon? Well, because it's a blue spell. It's just blue being blue. I thought it made sense in the context of the Civ, and it especially makes sense in the context of the color pie of Magic. And that completes our Portugal Civ. What do you think of my pronunciation of the leader's name? Well, no, never mind that. Never mind Bob. What do you think of my cards? Are they well balanced? Are they very original? After Phoenicia, really, I don't think anything can be quite as original as what I've done for them. Still, I think I thought outside the box for Juan III, the colonizer, and it turned out pretty well. So would you make that deck into a deck that commits crimes, that targets opponents, and triggers things like the Feitoria? Or since you can't really rely on the Feitoria always being in play, would you rather rely entirely on what your commander gives you and therefore build around blue vehicles, around ships? Are there enough blue vehicles in Magic to make that a reality? I think there are. I certainly went out of my way to create even more in this project. And finally, would you even consider turning him into a milling deck? Again, that was not the point, but it could be a thing. So I can't wait to find out what you think of my little Portuguese bundle. And do let me know in the comments which other Civ you would like me to do next. And I'll see you then.